Hi guys. I finished a platform on Nant Gwernol a few weeks ago, but have yet to fill it up with detail. Even a small, extremely rural station like this one has a fair amount of interest. Well, modelling interest. I don't know anyone who has a penchant for bins, and I live in Wales. Some of this will be scratch built, but I've also been lucky enough to be helped by a couple of skilled resin printer people. I'll show you that now. First up are the benches. These were actually sent to me a while ago along with the station building by MS Models. I believe they're modelled on the benches at Dolgoch, which works for me. The other product kindly sent over were the TR bins. See, I mentioned bins at the beginning for good reason. These came from Mini Builds, the chaps who created the beautiful Clayton battery logo I built a few weeks back. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole in this video, but expect to see more new products from them on my channel very soon. These bins have details so fine that you can actually read the raised letters on them, if you can read in Cymraeg. And my contribution this week comes in the form of display boards found along the platform. I've printed these in random sizes and will choose which looks correct on the model when I size them up. Oh, and note the solar panel at the very top. I had to hand draw this on paint as I couldn't find one that looked correct. I sure do know how to waste my time. Right, well, the resin printed bits are basically ready to go into painting from the packet. So I'll chop a couple of cotton buds in half and glue the pieces to them. This aids the painting stage when trying to handle the smaller pieces. I only need 2 bins for this build. One will be open top and the second will have a lid on. So that may as well get glued on now. Only a teeny tiny drop of super glue is needed, as it'll take a great deal of bad luck to get caught and ripped off the bin when it's on the model. Then again, that is well within my skill set. With all that building out of the way, the primer can go on. As usual, I'm going with my trusted car primer. It's in a rattle can, so it's nice and quick to pick up and spray. The benches look to be a lighter brown than the fence behind them, so this will be sprayed on with the airbrush. Not only because I airbrush basically everything, but because hand painting such fine models such as these runs the risk of filling in all the lovely detail and ruining it forever. And this, my friends, is the exact scenario which will lead to loved ones whispering "shame" into the modelling room as they walk past. Once the base coat is dry, the benches are dry brushed to pick out said detail. This is typically done with light antique white mixed with a little bit of base coat. I'm aiming for about 90% of the paint to be wiped off from the brush onto a paper towel before even touching the model. This ensures a nice dry coat. That being said, you can see here that the white looks too intense. So I've screwed up my own method. Not to worry though, because by using a slightly damp cotton bud, I can click undo on the last move. It's like it never happened. Hey, it's almost like that was all staged to show you a new tip. It wasn't. One detail that I wanted to add to these benches were the memorial nameplates. You may see this as out of reach for you to try, but to put this into context, I'm literally painting this with a toddler on my shoulders. Not my idea, but I don't get a say in the matter. When it's done, it can be snapped off the cotton bud. Moving on to the bins, and the main base coat is the same as that on the station building. Unfortunately, this is a custom mix that I made a few years ago, so you're on your own with that one. Again, another classic example of where the airbrush is the ideal instrument to apply paint. The lettering is so fine it really wouldn't take much to fill it in and make it disappear. The green dries in no time, and I can apply the gold lettering. This is getting close to a dry brush as I'm really cautious of ruining the lovely painted wording. Luckily, even as a super thin coat such as this, gold tends to cover pretty well. The bin with the lid on is done at this point, but the open bin needs to be painted black inside. In the scale of 5.5mm, I've added rubbish to the inside of bins in the past, but I'm not sure I'll bother here because it's just too small. Instead of moving the brush, I'm actually rotating the bin itself, thinking that this will give a more level finish. I don't think it did. Both bins now need a bit of dry brushing to add interest. It also acts to highlight the subtle surface detail. As always, this is done on the downstrokes to keep everything looking like a highlight. I need to move on to the scratch building now, and the first job is to cut the pieces out. I'm starting with the Nant Gwernol information board, for no logical reason, because it's in the middle. To check the size, I'm squaring it up against a scale figure. This actually looks a little too large, so I'll swap it out and cut the next size down. As this has only been printed on paper, I need it to bond to something stronger. I'm using Copydex to do this, as I have a theory that it won't absorb into the paper and ruin it like PVA or superglue would. I'm gluing it down onto thin plasticard, which can then be cut out using the paper front as a template. This particular signboard is held up by two large wooden posts with fancy slanting tips. Tips, I said. These are cut from plasticard as well. Moving on to the solar panel, and this is slightly different. This needs a raised rim around the outside, and it will be made using styrene strip. In the past, I used to cut strips from plasticard sheet, but it's not worth the hassle as you end up with pieces bent and curved. When I've cut the rim out in rough pieces, they can then be glued onto the sides of the solar panel with a few drops of superglue. When the glue's dry, the excess can be cut off the corner joins. Doing it this way and not before gluing means that I can get the correct size easy peasy. The solar panel is attached to the platform edge using a couple of metal strips. They're a kind of slotted channel, but as it'll be near impossible to make this in 1/76th scale, I'll just pretend that I haven't seen it and I'll make it from plain strip. I found the easiest way to add these on was to first glue the top pair, as these look to be in line with the panel itself, and then glue on the bottom two on an angle after. To get these set as soon as possible, I'll use a superglue accelerator to speed it up. The next sign is in a proper frame, like a lovely picture. This is made in the same sort of style as the solar panel, but the strips are on top of the piece instead of round the outside. That being said, the excess is still cut off in the same way. And because I didn't know how thick these strips would be, I can also use the outside of it to cut the excess off the backboard itself. The rest of the signs are going to be attached to the layout by legs, so these are glued on as well. Because the pieces are mostly made out of plastic, they all need to be primed before painting. So, the best way to do this without overspray ruining the picture itself, the signs are glued face down onto tape. These can then be coated with grey primer. The grey will pretty much be the finished colour, but I'll tone and weather it down with brown washes later. Down to hand painting the pieces now, and the lip of the pictures need a steady hand to keep it tidy. This can be done using the side of the brush and not the tip. The board legs can be painted in with earth brown. Lovely bit of earth brown. The wooden pieces holding up the information sign need the tops picked out in white, and to keep it looking neat, I'll mask it off and paint away from that. I don't want the white looking too clean and new, so I'll paint it with one coat, so hopefully a bit of grey will show through. The signboard can then be glued onto these. This needs to be done at an angle, and no, I haven't used a protractor to check the exact angle. Actually, now I've said that, I kinda wish I had. One sign I haven't shown being made is the station nameboard itself. That was because this was done in the same way as the others, with a lip being glued onto the outside. This is being picked out in the same painting style as well. The only difference is this needs to be in the same green as the bins. I'm pretty happy with how this sign's looking now, because it never looks that good when I used raised lettering on signs like this, because the painting always looks a tad messy. Well, on mine anyway. I can now start to glue the pieces onto the scene. The station nameboard is going to be glued on with a couple of pieces of rail. I should have used longer pieces when I did the fence, but I didn't realise they were rail as well, so I just extended a few. The rest of the signs are then just glued on with drops of super glue. It's funny how adding just a couple of pieces like this starts to fill up a scene, and gives it a bit of life. The bin and the benches are glued down as well. And you can see the solar panel sitting on an angle. Best of luck finding the sun in Wales at the moment. That's all done now, and the only thing I want to do to finish them off, well, apart from that brown wash on the back that I keep forgetting to do, is to add more leaves around the bottom of the signs. Because at the moment the legs are sitting proud of the surface, so I'll do that later. Okay, well compared to last week when I built a whole diorama, it's only a small update this week, but it's important to get these things into the scene. It's unique parts like these that make the layout really feel like Nant Gwernol, and not just some generic narrow gauge layout. Okie dokie, well cheers for watching. Enjoy your piece until next Friday, you've earned it. Cheers.